Hello, welcome back to another review on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how are you this week?
Oh, Jeff, feels like Wednesday on a Wednesday, baby. And I, for one, like the way that these winds are blowing. How are you doing in 2026?
So far, so good. 2026 off to a roaring start. Already got 6 birdies on the board for my golfers out there. You'll know what I'm saying. Pretty good start to the year. And I think this is going to be a pretty good start to our typical album conversations that we do dozens of times every year. And we're going to kick it off this year with one we maybe should have got to last year, and maybe all those end of year best of album nominees. Probably glad we didn't get to this one last year. And it is Wednesday and the album Bleed. Now, Alex, what was your familiarity with Wednesday? Because I feel like you were probably more likely to know who they were than I was before we did this album.
Yes, so we did our 2025 album catch up, and that was one of my album picks. I talked about it very briefly. I had come onto it just like stumbling around music Reddit. If you just kind of look up a band that you're interested in, some kind of factoid or whatever, usually it leads you down a hole where people are throwing out other bands. And then if a lot of people are chiming in and being like, no one's listening to Wednesday, but they're on the cutting edge.
Mm-hmm.
You fucking like Geese, go to hell. This is Wednesday's where it's at.
Yeah.
You start to see that and you're like, all right, you take that as an endorsement, you check it out. Just what I did with this album. And it came out in September, so we're definitely, a little behind the curve here, but it wasn't until like the end of the year that I got a chance to listen to this.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, I remember saying to you, you might check it out. You might enjoy it. And I thought you would enjoy it, but I perceived more enthusiasm in your text than I think I expected to.
Yes, I think for me, this album contained a whole lot of the things that I like. And the way that in the thing of the things that I like. So what I'm referencing specifically is like, punk, kind of shoegaze, but like definitely heavier shoegaze type of music, country music, like shoegaze and punk. Sure, I'll give you those can probably find their way together pretty well, but country and shoegaze and country and punk, and it's like those are a little tougher to mesh. And then I also heard some like kind of early Death Cab for Cutie. I don't even really want to say early Death Cab because they're still kind of rocking like that. But there was a lot of influences I heard in this, but none of it didn't sound like Wednesday, if that makes sense to you.
100%.
Yeah. So to me, there was just a lot to like on this album, and I think when you go on Spotify, like when you look at the album, you can see like kind of individually, how many times each song has been listened to or played through, right? And there was a couple songs that were some of my favorites. It seemed like they were the least played. But even the ones that were the most played, it's not as if I'm like, oh, what are people thinking? They should be listening to these. Like those were great too. It just to me, it's like an absolute missile of a rock and roll album. And it's a really unconventional missile of a rock and roll album.
Yeah, to the point where you're talking about your shoegaze and these country elements. I've seen people throw around the term country gaze. I think maybe there's something more fun and pithy we could find in there, but for now, that's a great placeholder genre. But I think there are a lot of moments where, they digress into pure punk, like the song Wasp is just like 90 seconds of an absolute brutal punk beatdown.
Oh, yes.
Hard as fuck. And this album goes hard as fuck the whole time, even when it's being kind of like circumspect and tender, it's going hard as fuck. And I think you get a song like the first one that to me like really jumped out was Townie's second song on the album.
Yes.
I was like really like keyed in on the lyrics, and it's like, okay, compared to the first song, compared to where the album starts, they're kind of infusing more of this country. I'm getting like the indie punkiness of Illuminati Hotties with the like raw, real, like country folk rock of Waxahachie.
Mm-hmm.
It was this like striking infusion where, once again, like you said, they're always uniquely Wednesday. I didn't feel like, oh, this is, just like Illuminati Hotties or just like Waxahachie. It was just these two sounds that kind of appeared and converged, but like never overpowered one another, and just made this really wholly unique sound. And then you get the lyrics, which I would like to read for the people, just the first verse. Catching up with the townies, some have gone, but most are still around. The ghosts of them surround me. They hang on tight until they drown. Met you in the neighborhood. You had connects to get us high. And then you sent my nudes around. And I never yelled at you about it because you died. So not only are those great lyrics, they paint a picture. They're cinematic. I was talking to a friend and I told him his song was cinematic. And he goes, "You're not the first person that said that. What do you mean by that?" And for me, it's scale and scope and the very distinct way that it's being set up for you. You see every shot of this. This is some really evocative, dare I say, poetic lyric writing where it's, they're great lyrics if you can just read them and get something out of them. And then when the music goes behind them, they just hit the stratosphere.
And the way that chorus hits for
Yes.
Died, like that's the thing that really sets it off, is I feel like they do such a good job with this like crescendo effect, this like kind of explosion effect where they just like launch into these choruses, and it just feels so big. Like that's the thing, I think when you listen to this album, it just feels like they're taking up every bit of space that it needs to take up. It doesn't feel compressed at all. And that's, so we can point to, so we get, if we want to get a little technical later on and start talking about the production, I think there's a lot to talk about with that. But I think on the track of like just how they veer from style to style to style. And so you go from like Elderberry Wine, and then you go into, and that's just basically a straight up country song. I mean, there's other songs that have some country elements to them, like Townies, like you mentioned. But that's just a straight up country song. And I think right now it's the most popular song on the album, and might be kind of the closest thing to a hit, I suppose, that you'd say that Wednesday's had so far. But then you go right into Fish Pepsi. And like when I listened to the album the first time, like I don't ever really look at the lyrics, or I don't look at like the track listing, I guess. I just hit play on the first song and just like let it run and just get a feel on like how that album flows.
Mm-hmm.
Am I listening to like an album all the way through? Is this a collection of singles, kind of as we like to say? And it gives me a better sense of that without setting any expectations, just like experience it in full. So like you go to Elderberry Wine, really nice country song, and then Fish Pepsi, I'm like, this is just the Grateful Dead. And I know it's called Fish, like with the PH, but until the lyrics come in, it really doesn't sound like Fish to me. Like that sounds a lot more like a Grateful Dead kind of just little shuffle kind of tune.
The similarity I see between them is they both refer to cicadas in the songs, except Jerry Garcia sings them as cicadas when he does Terrapin Station, Terrapin Suite.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's not a Fish song at all. That's just a casual line. The fourth, I'm looking at it right now, the fourth verse. We watched a Fish concert and Human Centipede. Two things I now wish I had never seen.
Yeah.
So hilarious dig on Fish. I sent this album to Tanner, and as soon as he hit that, he was like, "What the fuck?" Hey man, it's not me. It's Carly Hartzman and Wednesday. I don't know what to tell you. You got a problem? Take it up with her.
Yeah, and it's funny that they said that and made it sound like the Grateful Dead, because Fish always wanted to be the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, we can get into that whole thing. R.I.P. Bob Weir. But it's one of those things where you can reference Fish, Human Centipede, Pepsi, all of these things that are so weird together, but make total, like it's a complete picture. It's the way she talks about it. Like we watched a Fish concert and Human Centipede. We smoked weed out of a Pepsi can lying around under a Christmas tree. You see that whole image. And that is not like a spectacular, unique thing. Like we've all done the same thing where it's like we lied around. We lied around. We watched a Counting Crows concert on Palladium. Then we watched some kind of Stallone thing, and I think it was Christmas time. That's all these lyrics like really are. It's just the way that she goes about kind of setting the scene, but it's relatable in a really refreshing way. Like at a certain level, people stop especially like the big pop stars, they're not relatable in any way. I got a brand new car. I don't. So it must be nice. So to get someone who's creating like the most unremarkable imagery in a remarkable way that you can relate to, so much of this is just like non-judge. There's no judgment. There's just a lot of observation and just scenes that you could see playing out. And you have like extraordinary stories. Like we'll get to the Garys too at a certain point, but it's refreshing to see relatable in its unremarkability done in a remarkable way.
Yeah, I think the way that she writes the lyrics, it kind of reminded me of, when we listened to Courtney Barnett. It had some of that same like kind of the snarl, that like that really every lyric I think she's saying, there was a certain twang to it because she is, I think, she's from Carolina, somewhere around there, like mid-Atlantic area. And so you hear that twang and everything, especially in those country songs, she really like lets that rip. But there's also like such a snarl that she does, and like that really reminded me of like Courtney Barnett, because there was some like kind of country type stuff that Courtney Barnett would do, but she could also like let it rip like Wednesday does as well. And I just got to say, I want just if all it is maybe a 15-minute album or something, I just want an album full of songs like Wasp.
Yeah, Wasp hits hard as fuck, because that's the thing, like instrumentally on this, you have like these heavy, crunchy guitars. And then when they add more of the country element in, you got like the great, like kind of rusted out lap steel kind of thing. So it's grungy, but it's not intentionally loose around the edges like Pup does, where that's part of Pup's aesthetic. They're like, it can sound like shit and it's fine. It's kind of the charm of it. This had a grunginess while like being expertly produced. And yeah, so you just have like you're hearing all these great licks all throughout the album, great guitar work. And then you get to Wasp and it's like the perfect distillation. It is the extract of all of their punk rock instincts given 90 seconds to go fucking ham.
Yeah. This to me, it had the grunge and like the grit of Pup, and especially on the very first song on the album, like that, I just thought of Pup immediately when I heard that song. But it has that grunge and that like grit to it, but it also it at the same time, it has the same time it's doing that grunge and grit, it has the polish of like Always, where it's this really just shiny, a lot of stuff going on at once, kind of indie rock music, where Always never felt heavy. They were very polished and the songs were a lot of fun. They had a lot of energy. I feel like this takes that energy and that polish, but like just adds a little bit of that grit and grunge to it. And it's just such a good melding of it, because it doesn't lose any of the heaviness, any of that feeling of like, oh yeah, that kind of like visceral feeling you get from that kind of music. But it also doesn't feel like you have to figure it out sometimes like you do with Pup.
Yeah, and I think it's very cool how they can switch from that kind of sound back into the kind of almost like Olivia Rodrigo vocals at some points. I think specifically when I think of Townies, and what was the other one I earmarked? Shit, which one was it? I had one where I was like, you get that same kind of like you said, the snarl that remains kind of like pretty and pleasant while also being kind of like guttural and surprising. You don't expect it to come out of that person. I think this is an album that is just full of so many highly emotional moments that are made that way because of Carly's voice. I think you look at the lyrics on their own in many instances, and they come across, like I said, as very observational. There's not a ton of, I saw you over in the grass and I wanted to kick you in the fucking balls as hard as I could because I hate you. Yes, I'm looking and I see you in the grass, and here's all the things that I notice. And the way she speaks about them takes on an emotional quality without necessarily telling us I'm pissed, I'm wistful, whatever. And then there's the quality of the vocals. So just like a great pop punk front woman, at the head of this like slacker punk, slacker
Mhm.
rock, country shoegaze mashup that shouldn't work but does, and has a ton of influences that you can like, you know, Dinosaur Jr.,
Mhm.
Hole. You can hear all these things. Excuse me. But it's never one of those, well, you're just kind of aping that and now you fade into the background as a result. It's
Mhm.
just all stuff that went into what you could sort of call a cosmic gumbo, Jeff.
God damn.
Ah, anytime I get to use that reference. It's for you, Crashmore. Rest in peace. That guy
Yeah.
died. That's very sad.
Well, there is, we've been talking about all sorts of things that we like about this album. I think sort of an underrated thing that's also been propelling this album is the fact that there's a little bit of a Fleetwood Mac kind of like vibe to things here, because Carly Hartzman and MJ Lenderman, who is all over this album too, like they used to be together and now they are not together anymore. And there's a lot of songs on here I think that she wrote specifically about him. Um, there's a lot of stuff on here that probably has nothing to do with him, just other emotions. There's more to life, I suppose, than just him. But it's one of those things where it's always interesting, where people put the art above any sort of personal emotion they might feel about it. Not saying that they probably hate each other or anything like that. It's just got to be a little bit awkward, right? It's got to be a little weird hearing the songs that are about you and playing on them.
Well, and I guess there's this weird sense of, weird in a good way, sense of professionalism that's kind of running through it, because they broke up on tour, like mutually split on tour, did not tell the rest of the band. But somehow you get the sense that like the band must have intuited this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of thing where MJ Lenderman's going to be there in the studio playing guitar. He's just not going to tour anymore. And it has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
It's focusing on these solo projects, because you listen, like you say Fleetwood Mac, you listen to Silver Spring,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll never get away from the sound of a woman that loves you. That is like watching her sing that to him, you feel every bit of that down
Oh
to
yeah.
your toes. Whereas in this one, it's a very different, like I'm looking at the second verse of Elderberry Wine. You'll cry at commercials at an unbolted leg scraping against the ground as the tilt-a-whirl goes around. Roll one up, say it's mostly CBD. Said, I want to have your baby because I freckle and you tan. I find comfort that angels don't give a damn. Mostly concentrated in that line, I want to have your baby because I freckle and you tan.
Mm-hmm.
That's too personal not to be about somebody.
Yeah.
These details are too personal not to be about. So these are the moments where I kind of keyed in on it, going in with foreknowledge, being like, oh, MJ, you dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting listening to this whole thing in that context.
Yeah. And as much as, I don't want to have people know that I'm a celebrity gossip type of person, I love that stuff.
You messy bitch.
I am a messy bitch. And I think that made it more interesting in the first place for me to listen to it, because I'm like, oh, maybe she'll talk some major shit about him or something. And she doesn't really.
No.
There's certainly talking about being upset about the situation and things like that, but it never felt like any personal attacks. So there's it has something in common with the Fleetwood Mac style thing, but I think there was a lot less antagonism involved with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably less cocaine too.
I would have to imagine far less cocaine and
less.
humping.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think for Wednesday, for Bleeds, this one is going to be an 8.
You're giving it an 8 out of 10.
I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10. All right. I think, not to be like totally unexciting for the first episode of the year and be like, yeah, I also give it an 8. I also give it an 8. There are a couple moments where there's like a little bit of a lull, or there are moments where one element is maybe outshining the other. So it's not necessarily a deficiency on their part, but things don't feel balanced, where you're like, lyrically, this is way overwritten for what this is musically. So it was either like add more musical instruments on, but you're not that kind of band. So scale this back a little bit. This is a lot of thunder and not quite enough lightning. You don't want to say it's all hat and no cattle because they have the bona fides to back it up. But it is definitely, there are moments where to get out ahead of their skis a little bit on an element or two, but that happens like 2-3 songs on this thing, and it doesn't make them bad.
Mhm.
It's just your brain notices. You're like, I'm not as locked in as I was. But I think they are still like kind of a relatively younger band. Certainly in terms of like my exposure to them. So I want to go back and listen to the back catalog and see what else there is. But for me, this was just like strong fundamentals, great production, really great musicianship, interesting, unique point of view with the lyrics, great front woman in Carly Hartsman. So this, yeah, I would say with all that considered, I will also give it an 8 to start the year.
Yeah, and I think eight's a score to be proud of. I think Wednesday should be proud of themselves. The first ever 8 achieved on Out of That Line.
The record to beat officially.
The record to beat officially. Congratulations to them. Alex, did you have any final thoughts now that we're back in our first episode of the year?
Do you have any final thoughts? Any final fantasies? Yeah, I'll tell you about this one fantasy I got where Garth Brooks is giving birth to something resembling a almond cheddar cheese log with almond eyes.
Santa Claus's tummy tum.
Well, I won't say the other part, but Bloodhound Gang fans, you know what I mean. And this is just a reminder that Jeff and I need to do an on the record for Bloodhound Gang or a review of Bloodhound Gang. Hooray for boobies real soon. We've talked about it enough. We've made enough sly references to it. I think it's time.
Yeah.
It's time.
But my pop's name is Dick.
I'm trying to sit here and think of words that rhyme with vagina.
You'd be like lima bean.
Or what about that teenage witch Sabrina?
That's a made up word, Jim.
Oh. you think of any maybe changing the word vagina?
Just something else?
What, like or
God, the first time I heard that, just that hit like a Mack truck. That was just straight in my veins.
Dude,
8th grade.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You played it for me in your car, in Spike, I think was the car. I don't remember which one, but you played that album for me. We went to the Floating Bridge and we listened to that album.
Oh, yeah.
And I just was pissing myself the entire time, and it rocked. So we this small digression is all of which to say we must do that episode. We must do it soon. And On the Record is a series that you can find along with our other premium content, such as reviews, such as reactions, or our little one-off fun singles things that we do. They can all be found in one centralized location, a bit of a vault, if you will, for my Fallout watchers. Don't be a ghoul. Come on in, grab yourself a nice ice-cold Nuka-Cola. I'm not sponsored by any of these products, or Amazon, or Fallout, or Walton Goggins. But I'll tell you what I am sponsored by. YouTube.com/C/Out on That Line. Folks, it's the place to be. As Sun Ra said, space is the place. So I don't know what you're still doing here with your feet on the ground on planet Earth when you can join us in the splendor that is YouTube.com/C/Out on That Line. Subscribe today.
That is a wonderful, wonderful start to the year. Folks, we're looking forward to the next time. We'll see you then.